franktalks.com.
Need help with love, sex, dating, or relationship issues? Help from Frank Kermit, the best-selling author and Canada's most international relationship coach, is only a click away at franktalks.com.
Kermit is joining us today to talk about being single. When we consider all the hassles and sometimes pain that a person can go through in the dating process, is being single really all that bad? Frank, welcome back to the Kelly Alexander Show.
Hi, Kelly. Great to be here.
So, Frank, is it possible to be single and still be happy?
Absolutely. It's just as possible to be in a relationship and be miserable. Just because you're single or just because you're in a relationship is no guarantee of happiness. And if you make that assumption going in, you might be surprised to find out the opposite.
And do you think that for those people who are comfortable with being single, can they ever get out of that comfort zone and date again, or are they just going to stay in that, rut that's not a rut according to them?
Well, it really depends why they want to be forever single. There are those people who basically, they've just given up on finding love and they're miserable at the concept. So they say, I'm going to be single basically because they have too much pain associated with seeking out relationships. And then there are those people who really, they're just happier not being in a serious relationship. Sometimes they're just happier not being in a relationship at all. One of the signs to look for is somebody speaking negatively about relationships. If they're speaking negatively about relationships, chances are they associate some form of pain with seeking out relationships. If, however, they're speaking positively about relationships, saying, look, relationships are great, they're wonderful, it's just not for me, that's a pretty good sign that someone is happily single because it suits their lifestyle, it suits what they want to do and helps them meet those goals.
In your experience, Frank, have you ever met a significant amount of people that are actually happy being single, or is it more of that complain type that, they're saying they're okay, but really they're not?
Well, as a relationship coach and natural therapist, nobody comes to me if they're happy being single. I have people who come to me and say that they're pretty much given up on relationships, they've given up on their love life, and they're very down about it. So if they're coming to me, it means that they're still hopeful that they still might be able to figure out how to get into a relationship and how to make it work. Those people who are truly happy being single don't seek out relationship coaches.
Okay, that's fair. That's true, and that's something to think about. How much harder is it for someone who has been single for a long time to find someone? Because, I guess just like anything, you're out of practice.
Oh, it's actually much more difficult. The longer you're out of the game, so to speak, the harder it is to get back in. And it isn't because a person doesn't desire companionship. It isn't because a person stops desiring sex or intimacy. It's because people get comfortable with their situation. And even those people who study success, whether it be financial success, health success, there's a major concept that says stay out of your comfort zone. Always be just outside of your comfort zone. Same thing happens with relationships. When you've been alone for a long, long time, you get comfortable being alone. You may not be thrilled about the situation, but it's familiar. It's comfortable. You know what to expect. And when you try to challenge that by saying, okay, I've got to get myself back out there. I want to start going out on dates. I want to go out on blind dates. I'm going to ask my friends to set me up. I'm going to try speed dating. I'm going to try just talking to a stranger at a cafe. These things, although they have the potential of allowing you to really connect with someone, it's still incredibly scary, and it doesn't feel right. It's going to feel awkward, not because what you're doing is bad, but because it's unfamiliar. And when you do something that is unfamiliar, it forces you out of that comfort zone.
Joining us on the Kelly Alexander Show, relationship coach Frank Kermit. You can check him out, franktalks.com. Do you really need to have or have been in a good relationship to feel as though, we've had some level of success in love and relationships?
Generally speaking, if you're in a good relationship, you at least know what is possible. If you've ever been in a relationship where you truly felt loved and you truly felt that your love was returned and it built you up, it gave you some sense of self-esteem, it actually strengthened your self-worth, then it's going to be easier for you to seek out a new relationship because you have positive associations with relationships and dating. If you've only ever had bad experiences, that's when you start thinking that everybody is the same and all relationships suck and so on and so forth. The fact is that maybe you just don't know how to choose the right partners to date. If you've had bad experiences, it's going to sour you and make it a little bit more difficult to find motivation.
Is that the common denominator, Frank, to keep in mind that if you do have a string of bad relationships, you might need to point the finger back at yourself and not at everyone else?
Oh, Kelly, you hit the nail on the head. When you want to enter into any sort of coaching or any sort of self-actualization work, the first thing you need to understand is that you are the common element in every relationship you've ever had. Now, if you only had, let's say, 2 or 3 relationships, and your first relationship, you could say, well, that person was just a mean person. You get into your second relationship, that person was a con artist. They knew how to lie to me. When it keeps happening to you over and over and over, and you have a string of bad relationships, you got to look at the common element. Common element is you. And you have to figure out, what is it that you're missing? What red flags are you not spotting? What behavior patterns are you exhibiting that is attracting these kind of people to you? That's where we begin our work.
I suppose, as in anything in life, your outer demeanor can maybe attract some of these people that you don't want as well. Like, I'm assuming if, you're not feeling well with yourself, you might fall prey to these people as well.
In my work, I call it the attraction mechanism. Everybody has an attraction mechanism. It's going to decide who it is that you're going to feel attracted to and who you're going to attract to you. If you've got a vibe, and I'm using the word vibe for lack of a better term, if you've got a certain vibe where you really don't like yourself, you're only going to be attracted to people who are going to treat you in exactly the same way that you value yourself. So when you want to start thinking about, how do I start dating better people, one of the first things that I encourage people to do, and nobody's happy about this, by the way, I tell people, when you're really, really attracted to someone, take that as a red flag. And maybe the best thing you can do is try dating people that you're not necessarily attracted to. Don't go after your type if every time you've dated your type it hasn't worked out. It means your attraction mechanism needs some tweaking. And the way that you fix that is that you start dating people that you're not necessarily attracted to so that you get used to being treated well in a relationship. Once you can start associating positive feelings, positive associations with being treated well in a relationship, that's when you can start to train yourself to be attracted to those people who would be better long-term partners for you.
Do you find, Frank, long-term single people, again, I suppose if they fall under the radar of, or under the category of not dealing with stuff, they're the ones that need to be doing this sort of, self-actualization?
In the sense that if someone is going through something really bad, or they're miserable, or they're unhappy, then yes, they do need to come to some sort of self-actualization. They have to go through that process because they are in charge of their lives. They are in charge of the decisions that they make. And if the decisions that they've made have led them to a bad place, we've got to look at what's behind that and see what we can do about fixing that.
Now, I actually have a friend right now who is single. She was in a relationship just last year for about a year and a half, and things didn't work out. She actually moved in with him sort of knowing it probably wasn't a good idea. And then sure enough, within 8 weeks, she realized, she should have trusted her gut to begin with. But at least she said that she knew at that point she had tried everything. So she got out of it, moved out of there, and now she actually is exuding very happy and healthy, at least to me, behaviors, and is quite happy to be single right now.
It sounds to me that she went through a process where she broke a repeating behavior pattern. Let's look at what she did. She knew on some level that moving in with her partner was a bad choice. On some level, though, she said, well, what if it's my own doubts? What if I'm just, what if I just have cold feet? So she pushed herself to the limit to say, no, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try as hard as I can to make this work, even though I have serious doubts. Well, she did try it. It didn't work out. She moved out. But look at what she learned. She learned that the next time she gets that signal on the inside that says, no, this is not going to work, she's going to learn to trust it. And if you're trying to figure out why she's so happy right now in her life, She's learned that she could trust herself. She's reached a point of redemption. She's broken the repeating behavior pattern. She now can trust herself not to make that same mistake again, because instead of continuing to stay in that bad situation, which is what some people do, and to their credit, they're doing it out of the best of intentions. They get into a bad situation and they keep trying and they keep trying and they keep trying, wanting to make it work. And, God bless them. Their intentions are really good, but the result isn't always good. She broke that pattern. She pulled herself out of a bad situation, and now she knows she can trust herself. What a wonderful time in her life this is.
And it's funny, Frank, because she does feel like she's in a really good time. But my next sort of point that I want to ask you is the fact that, so she's been alone, I think it's probably about 9 months now, enjoyed the summer, being single, all that sort of stuff. And now she's finding that a bunch of her friends that are coupled up, as well as certain family members, are starting to get on her case and trying to, force her into thinking like, well, it's time to get back on the horse. It's time to, get yourself back into a relationship.
Okay, look, when other people are trying to encourage a single person to get into a relationship, sometimes the motivations are very legitimate. The person is thinking, well, I love this person and I want this person to be happy, and I think that that person being in a relationship will make that person happy. So there could be some very good intentions behind there. There could also be some very not so good intentions. Maybe her parents are saying, no, we want to become grandparents, so you got to get married and start having kids. Sometimes it's because people are just jealous. I see that you're single. I see that you're having fun. I see that you have a great life that I'd want to have, but I didn't get that because I got into a relationship because I felt I had to, and I don't want you to be happy when I don't get to be happy. We never know what other people's motivations really are. It's great that if we take the assumption that they just want us to be happy. If you can decipher the fact that the motivations behind everybody trying to encourage her is, we want you to be happy and we think that a relationship would make you happy, you take it for what it is. You say, thanks a lot, I really appreciate it, but I'm not interested. If you feel that the motivations are underhanded, if you feel that the motivations are anything less than a genuine concern for your happiness, that's when you have to consider whether or not to even involve these people in your life, or maybe to put some distance from that toxic behavior.
Do you think, Frank, that, if you do have a single friend, that you should get involved and try to help set them up? Or is that, again, a place where you need to be a good friend and realize maybe they need to be alone right now?
If you want to be a very good friend, the best thing you can do is to talk to your friend and say, listen, would you be interested in meeting someone? And let that person decide.
Okay.
I have set up my friends on every occasion possible. Sometimes I'll be dating someone and we find out within the first 2 or 3 dates, look, we're really not connecting here. This relationship just simply can't go anywhere where our values are just too incompatible. What I would do in those situations is I would say, tell me about what it is you're looking for. Because if one of my friends fits the bill, I'm more than happy to introduce you. But I wouldn't just set it up and force it on my friend. I would call up my friend and say, hey, listen, I met this person. This person says that they're looking for these qualities. I think you fit the bill. Would you be interested in meeting this person? And if they say, hey, sure, why not? I'm happy. Come on over for a glass of wine. We'll watch a DVD. You can all get to know each other. And if they say, no, I'm really not interested in it. Okay, I tried, but when you are interested, you let me know. That's the best thing you can do. You offer it, but you have to respect a person's boundaries when they say no, that they're not interested. In my philosophy, however, especially if people are coming to me as the relationship coach, my belief is that if anybody wants to set you up with anybody, you take it. You go on one date. If nothing else, it'll be one evening where you're not spending time alone and you're getting to know somebody else and hopefully learning about yourself.
Frank, are there actually people out there who are just too, quote-unquote, damaged to be in relationships? And when I say that, I mean either by their own dating history or let's say they had a really difficult growing up experience where their own parents were a nightmare and they've learned bad behaviors.
Yes, there are some people who are too damaged to be in a relationship. One of the best examples of this is when people go into some kind of rehabilitation program to, let's say, get over an addiction. One of the tenets of any rehabilitation program is that the person has to drop all contact with their relations. They have to not even potentially date somebody that they meet within the program. It's to force people to focus on themselves and not use a romantic interlude as a distraction. That's an example of someone being too damaged to get into a relationship. They need the time to heal. In other cases, sometimes people grow up in such horrible toxic environments that before they can even enter into a relationship involving another person into the intricacies of their life, they have to figure out their own boundaries. They have to figure out even just how to live a normal life, because it may not even be something that's second nature to them. What's second nature to a person who grew up in such a toxic environment is more toxic behaviors. And when you get into a relationship and you don't know what to do, people tend to revert back to these automated responses that have been programmed into them in those toxic environments. So you may not see yourself as a toxic person. You may think, I'm not going to be just like those people who raised me. But put yourself in a situation where you haven't really thought about what your own boundaries are. What principles do you want to live by? What ethics and morals do you want to follow? There's an incredibly high chance that you're going to repeat the same behavior patterns that you were exposed to. Not because you're a bad person, but because that's what's familiar to you. And people doing things that are unfamiliar gets back to that concept of stepping out of the comfort zone. Even when a familiar behavior is still the wrong behavior, because it's familiar, that's what makes it comfortable.
Frank, what's your stance on, teenage relationships? Like, how important are they for your later years? Because, sometimes when you're 14, 15, 16, you get into these big tragic romances or whatever, but I'm assuming they're actually learning tools that might actually help you later on when you're in your 20s and your 30s, because you've been through heartbreak.
This is such a challenging question, and that's because for a teenager, that new relationship that they're going through really is the defining point. Every person that they date afterwards is going to be compared to those first few relationships. So you're basically getting a clean slate, and you're creating the model that everything else is going to be compared to. It could be a very powerful experience, because for that teenager, it might really be their first experiences with love. Now, experience is a good thing if you have the context of understanding how to relate to that experience. What I mean is this. If you're a teenager and maybe you don't really have any knowledge of the world, and you get into a relationship and something happens in that relationship which is really not appropriate, such as you sharing something with your partner and then your partner going around and blabbing it to the entire school, that's a completely inappropriate behavior. As a teenager, though, you might think, well, if I really love the person and they're treating me badly, I guess that I should just accept it, because when you love somebody, you have to accept these sort of behaviors, and it starts a cycle of when you love somebody, then when they do something bad, that becomes okay, and it's not okay. And an adult can understand that. An adult is expected to know better. An adult is expected to say, look, whether or not I love you doesn't change the fact that what you're doing is wrong, and if you mistreat me, then how I feel about you is irrelevant. That's an adult perspective, but chances are they may have learned that in other areas of their life. But when you're a teenager, you may not have the context, you may not have the maturity and the experience to interpret that. Now let's look at somebody who's in their 30s and it's their first serious relationship. They still may behave like a teenager in that respect. But because they're an adult and they're not in a social situation where the latest rumor could completely destroy their self-esteem, because at the age of 30, they're probably independent. They probably don't have the same type of peer pressure that a teenager does. It's a different experience. They may still make the same mistakes, but the consequences of those mistakes are different. That's why when I deal with parents and talk to their teenagers, I make them realize that the person that you're dating now, chances are, isn't going to be the person that you're going to marry and have kids with. So it's great that you're getting the experience, but keep it realistic. And if there's certain things that you really want to reserve for someone more serious in your life, or who's got a higher chance of being there in your future, then you might want to hold off on certain things.
If you stay single throughout your teenage years, does that make things more difficult or easier when you're in your 20s?
I think that really depends on the experiences you've had as a teenager. I know that when I was a teenager, I got stood up at my prom. And prior to getting stood up at my prom, any interaction I had in trying to date was usually just generally negative because I had my own stuff to deal with. So when I got into my 20s and I was dating, the scars of being stood up at my prom and the scars from being made fun of when I admitted that I liked someone in my class, it did make it more difficult as an adult because I never had processed and never healed that pain. On the other hand, I took a lot of chances as a teenager. I would ask people out. I would go out on dates. I put myself out there so that when I was older, because I had had the experience of already doing it, yes, I still had the scars, but I wasn't afraid of just the basic stuff, such as asking somebody out on a date. For those people who never gone out on a date in high school and now they end up in their early 20s, still having not going out on a date, there's an extra pressure of, well, I didn't screw it up before, but now I'm even more worried of screwing up. There's an entire branch of my practice where I deal with adult-aged virgins. And age 25 seems to be the age where it really hits them that if by the time they're 25 and they still haven't had any experience in the dating world, it's even more difficult for them to make that first step and to open up because by the age of 25, they feel the pressure that they should have already at least have had a boyfriend or a girlfriend by that point. So there's pros and cons to either one.
Okay. Now, to wrap things up, speaking of being single and all that involves, in your mind, what's the biggest obstacle for single people and what's a positive thing for single people?
The biggest obstacle for single people, I would have to say that maybe the biggest obstacle for single people is that some people may not be ready to make the commitment necessary to make changes in their life. When you've been single for a long time, you've gotten comfortable being who you are and living the way you're living. Some of my client base are people who have been single for so long that the concept of even sharing a living space with another human being is just too much for them because they're in their routine. They're very happy with the routine, even though they get a little bit lonely. The concept that, well, your whole routine is going to change because now every time you want to make a major decision, you're trying to decide if you should fix the car or buy a new one. Well, if you're single, the only person you have to consult is you. When you have someone new in your life, well, you have to consult them too because there might be something that they need that's going to factor into whether or not you're going to spend that money or make the new investment. That's not easy for people who have been single for a long time and are trying to figure out if they want to get into a new relationship. There's a lot of work involved, especially when you have to get used to the idea that your expectations of being in a relationship are going to have to change. Because once you get into a real relationship, it's not the fantasy thing that you've viewed in the movies and have built up in your head, and there is no happily ever after. It's something that you're going to have to continually work on. There's ups and downs, and sometimes those down periods can be really bad to the point that you wish you were single again. But hey, you made the investment, and part of that is that you agreed to try and stick it out as much as you can until the bad outweighs the good.
And a positive aspect, I guess, of being single? Learning about yourself, I guess.
A positive aspect about being single, from the people that I've met who are happy to be single, there's nothing stopping them from whatever it is they want to do. Whatever it is they want to do, they can live a certain lifestyle of freedom and adventure, especially if they don't have children. That means that if they decide to completely change their life, take their career in a brand new direction, take chances that might land them homeless, but if the chances work out, it could be great and wonderful. Those are freedoms that single people have that people in relationship don't always have. And if that's important to you, if living that kind of lifestyle where you don't want to have to make anybody else suffer for the mistakes you might make. You want to be able to take chances and decisions on a whim, and you don't want to have to worry about somebody else being affected by that, then being single might be the best thing for you.
Perfect. Frank, thank you so much for your time on this.
Kelly, this has been great. I can't wait to do your show again.
Fantastic. That is our relationship coach, Frank Kermit. For more information on relationships, make sure to check out his website, franktalks.com. You can also check him out on our website, kellyalexandershow.com.
Need help with love, sex, dating and relationships? Visit franktalks.com.
Need help with love, sex, dating, and relationship issues? Help from Frank Kermit, the best-selling author and Canada's most international relationship coach, is only a click away at franktalks.com. Coaching available in person, by phone, and by Skype. For singles, couples, and alternative lifestyles, franktalks.com.
If you need help with your relationships, my buddy Frank, he's got some tips. Just go to franktalks.com. His advice is better than your mom's. He knows what you're going through, Frank has been there too. So log on to franktalks.com. franktalks.com.
What do you do when you feel like a fool? When your heart has been broken again? Pick up the phone or get onto Skype and talk on a private session. Yeah, get a little help from Frank Talks. Whoa, whoa, get by with a little help from Frank Talks. You gotta try a little help from Frank Talks. What do you do when your love goes away? Try coaching one-on-one. How do I sign up to turn things around? Just sign up at franktalks.com. Yeah, get by with help from Frank Talks. I get by with a little help from Frank Talks. Time to try a little help from Frank Talks. Doesn't cost a lot of money. It's the best rate going around. Could it cost a lot of money? Oh, it's worth every cent that you will put down. Yeah. franktalks.com. Oh, you got to go to get your help from franktalks.com. Yeah, yeah. franktalks.com. Would you believe that Frank gets results? Yes, we're certain. Just read the reviews. Frank knows his stuff, and Frank's got real goods. Good love can soon come to you.